Welcome. This yin practice will include yoga postures such as both sides of half butterfly pose, both sides of a reclined twist pose, both sides of shoelace pose with the lateral bend, and a supported bridge pose that I call Milky Way Pose. Useful props will be a couple of yoga blocks if you have them. If you don't have blocks, you can always substitute books, something to generate height underneath the supported bridge pose. And then whatever you need for soft padding like pillows and blankets to help manage sharp pressure points. The theme for class will be dark matter. It is believed by astronomers and cosmologists that 85% of the mass or matter in the universe is made up of stuff that we cannot see, that does not emit light, and yet has a vast influence over the gravity and the motions of the things that we can see in the universe, in space. And I'll mention an astronomer did a lot of the groundbreaking work to determine that there is something like dark matter out there. Her name was Vera Rubin. This practice starts with some breath work. So find a comfortable seat. Take your time. Get into a position that feels stable, feels allowing, maybe with a little space around you so that you can breathe. Take a moment to find your inner ground, and that means welcome yourself into the present moment. You can do this by noticing your own breath, noticing your own inhales and exhales. We'll do some. Try some breathing exercises later, but for now, the best breathing exercise is to become aware of your own breath, this completely natural and wild process that's going on in your body, and something that we tend to not notice and we tend to ignore most of the time. The power of yoga practice is noticing the things that we often take for granted and don't notice, just like the theme for this class is dark matter, the things that we can't see or don't notice, and yet have a great influence on our lives, particularly our breath. We can go throughout the whole day without noticing our breath, and yet without our breath we cannot live. So maybe begin to slow the breath down, maybe begin to deepen the breath. And I'm going to suggest trying this practice of a breath count. So maybe start off with what I call a 4-4 breath. And that just simply means on your next big inhale to a very slow count of 4. And then exhale to a slow count of 4. And you can keep that for a while. But the idea that I have is to double the time of the exhale if you can do that sustainably and comfortably. So maybe after your next exhale, when you inhale again, inhale to a slow count of 4, and then we'll exhale to a slow count of 8. So inhale, complete inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 1, 2. Exhale. And continue this breathing for a few more rounds of breath. If you're finding this strainful, always give yourself permission to come back to just a normal, natural breath for a while. This is not meant to be, it is meant as exercise for your cardiovascular system and a little bit of healthy stress. But if you're finding yourself gasping for air whenever we do a breath exercise, then the idea is to just let go of the exercise. Come back to a normal natural breath till you catch up. And then if you want to try again, you can try again. So maybe one more cycle here if you're still doing this here. One more inhale to a count of 4. And one more exhale to a count of 8. The exhale is the yin breath. It's sort of the unnoticed part of the breath, and it's an important cycle. So you can think of it as the dark matter part of the breath. And then just, if your eyes are closed, open your eyes, come back to a normal natural breath for a moment. Next breath exercise is a little bit of a breath and mudra vinyasa here that I call a heart kriya. So I'm going to suggest changing your seat if you wish. Now, if you're in a comfortable seat, you don't want to change, you don't have to change. Otherwise, you can come to sit back on your heels, knees together, if this is comfortable for you. If not, just maintain the seat, and you can do this heart kriya from this seat. So bring your hands together at heart center. Maybe bring your spine nice and neutral, so there's a little bit of toning in the core, just to make your spine feel long up through the crown of your head. And then on an inhale, sweep your hands up and around back to your forehead, your third eye. And then as you exhale, extend your arms out and kind of point your prayer hands kind of towards the sky, as if you're pointing at the sun or the stars. And then make a big circle with your index finger and your thumb, and as you exhale, draw that big circle back into your heart center. And then as you inhale, draw that circle out towards me, or towards the world. And then turn your palms to face up. And then on each hand, thumb and index finger touch. And then bend your elbows, draw your hands back to heart center on the exhale. And then hands to heart center. So that's the cycle. We'll do about 3 more of these here. So on your inhale, sweep your prayer hands up and around back to your third eye, to your forehead. And then exhale, extend your arms and hands up towards the sky. Inhale, draw a big circle with your fingers and thumb towards your heart center. And then exhale, push that positive energy out from your heart center into the universe. And then I call this prana mudra. It has many names, this thumb to index finger. Draw your hands back, and then hands to heart center on the exhale. So a couple more cycles. Inhale, hand to third eye. Exhale, draw the energy out to the universe. Inhale, circle of unity towards your heart center. Exhale, push that energy back out. Inhale, draw the energy back in, and then hands to heart center. One more cycle. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Good. And then from here, we'll start. The first yin posture is the first side of half butterfly pose. So it starts with sitting with legs extended out in front. And if that requires a little bit of padding or height underneath your sits bones, then by all means put some there. And then bend your right knee, and lower your right knee out to the side. Now, if the knee needs some padding under it or some support, feel free to always put something underneath there if you need to. Maybe you don't need a block, maybe you need a pillow or a blanket there. Slowly draw the heel in towards the center of your hips until you're feeling a stopping point. And the heel doesn't have to make it all the way to the hip. For some of us, maybe it does. This is the beginning of half butterfly pose. You can stay here, or you can begin to fold forward and round your torso. So this is yin. So things are trying to relax. If your leg needs to be a little bit bent, the extended leg is a little bit bent and rolls to one side. Maybe it rolls in, maybe it rolls out. That's fine. And then your torso releases and relaxes. Maybe you need support underneath your head or your torso. So maybe gather up props to create that support. Otherwise, it can hang in midair. But again, you're exploring your stopping point here. This is part of your edge. So don't worry about what you look like. worry about what this feels like. So you're noticing how far you go. Maybe some of us go a little bit, maybe some of us go all the way. If you're a contortionist, maybe you have to dig a hole in the floor so that your torso can keep going past your leg here. So you find your edge here. Once you've found something that is stopping you and you're feeling a little bit of sensation, that's your edge. Sometimes it might seem slightly uncomfortable, but not painful, not injurious. So if you're in the realm of injury and pain, that's too far, you need to back yourself up. So this is the first principle of yin. First principle is find your edge for your specific body. And it will be different for each one of us. Therefore, don't go by what it looks like, go by what it feels like. Yin yoga is an internal practice. So as you release, you'll come to your natural stopping points. Now, if they're painful, then you're just injuring yourself. So then you need support here. The second principle is create a little bit of stillness here. And that's more of a mental attitude. Once you've decided that you've found a good edge, now you decide to be patient and to stay. And you notice your breath. You notice your stopping points. And the third principle is time. You stay for a little bit longer than we normally stay in yoga postures. So instead of a few breaths, like 20 or 30 seconds, we stay for a few minutes. In this case, we'll stay here for around 3 minutes. And we've been here already for a minute and a half. So another minute and a half. And I just want to mention here in this last half of the yin posture, first of all, you can come out whenever you want to if you're feeling too much pain. And you can always adjust your edge. But the theme for class is dark matter. Dark matter is this matter or mass in the universe that we cannot see, that astronomers think is there because it's influencing the motion of things that we can see. It's the perfect theme for a yin class, because in a yin posture we're trying to feel our stopping points which we cannot see, and it influences our shape. It influences the superficial shape that we're making that we can see. And the idea is don't worry about the superficial shape that you can see. Worry about the influence of the unseen stopping points. And you're not really worrying about it, you're noticing them. You're noticing this. Yoga practice is paying attention and noticing these things that are unseen here. So maybe for these final 4 or 5 breaths or so, refine your edge. Re-notice your stopping points. Notice your breath here. Maybe muscles can relax a little bit more here and you can sink a little bit deeper. So you're trying to get in touch with your inner landscape, and your inner landscape is the dark matter of your being. And as I mentioned in the introduction, in space, in the universe, the dark matter dominates the matter that we see. We see stars, we see galaxies that glow, but the dark matter that surrounds them overwhelms them. It's about 85%, so only 15% of the things that glow and glitter in the night sky has the mass. The rest of the mass in the universe is something that we cannot see and cannot measure, but we can detect by how it influences things. How does your sensations influence this posture? So just one more breath here. And then slowly bring yourself up. You can maybe lean back here. Bring the right knee up, extend the right knee out. You can wiggle the toes and the legs around. I'm going to suggest one yang counter pose for this, and I call this the hinge maneuver. So make your way onto your back, bend your knees, draw them into your chest, and then extend your legs up towards the ceiling. Arms along your torso, palms face down, rooted into the ground. And then tone and engage through your core as you try to attempt to slowly lower your extended legs back down to the ground. Maybe you take a couple of slow breaths to do this. So this is a yang exercise, just to wake up the core muscles after a long yin posture. Or anything else you want to do, then try that. The next yin posture, instead of doing the other side of half butterfly right away, we'll do the first side of a supine twist, of this reclined twist here. So extend the left leg, bend the right knee again, same knee we did for half butterfly, and then take the knee in the left hand and draw the knee over to the left. You might have to, for some of us, we might have to shift our hips to the right a bit so that the right hip can easily stack on the left hip. Extend the right arm out to the right, shoulder height or head height, and then just find your stopping point here. Some of you, your knee will make it to the ground, and that will be fine. Some of you, it will float, and that will be fine. Some of you, it will float, and that will feel very unstable. And so then you find props to place under that leg to give it something to root on here. So again, you're moving by feel here. The right shoulder may be floating too. If that's feeling unstable, put something underneath the right shoulder. Otherwise, you're trying to let the right shoulder melt back down to the ground so that you know your torso is in a twist here. And you can leave the left hand on the right knee or the right thigh. And you can bend the bottom leg. Like I have my left leg straight, but if that's creating some kind of problem in your hip, then bend the left leg and bring it parallel to the right leg. Head can stay neutral. If you want a little bit of a twist in your neck, you can look towards your right. If you do that, lift your head up off the floor. Turn your head in and set it back down. If that's too much strain, then keep it neutral here. And we'll stay here for a few minutes. And I'll talk a little bit about this. A famous astronomer, she was born in 1928. She was born in the U.S. in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to a couple of immigrants, and she was born under the name of Vera Cooper. And as she grew up and went to school, she became very interested in science. And by the time she was 10 or 11 years old, they moved. They moved from Philadelphia and they moved to Washington, D.C. And there in the house that they moved into, she had a tiny little bedroom, which only had one window that looked up into the sky. And so she would sit up at night. She would turn the light off to make it look like she was sleeping. But she would actually stare out her window at the stars, and she would watch the apparent motion of the stars as they seemed to circle around the North Pole star as the Earth turned, and fascinated her. She became fascinated by stars and by motions, and became even more interested in science and math. And so as she worked her way through school, she finally went off to college in the 1940s to Vassar College. But before that, she was quite a bright, brilliant student. But of course, it was in the 1940s, and a lot of people didn't know how to deal with girls who were interested in science. One of her high school science teachers, a male teacher, basically gave her the advice that whatever she did in life, she would be quite successful at, but she should stay away from science. Well, she ignored him. She went on to Vassar College, and she majored in astronomy. She was the only person that majored in astronomy at the time, so she was the only person who got a degree at that time in astronomy. Vassar College had a telescope, so she got complete and total use of that telescope while she was there. She got interested into the motions went beyond stars and started looking at the motions of galaxies. And she noticed something weird about galaxies here. So about 5 more breaths here on this side. Again, give yourself permission and allow yourself to come out of any posture that you felt you've spent too much time in. Or readjust your edge. Maybe you don't feel anything anymore, and you'd like to feel those stopping points again. Feel metaphorical dark matter landscape in your body here. So at the time, astronomers felt like all galaxies should be. This is something that Hubble established. Hubble realized that most galaxies, their principal motion is away from each other to indicate the expansion of the universe. Vera Rubin started measuring the motions of galaxies, and she realized that in general they did this, but not quite. They had kind of their own individual. They were kind of moving around erratically. Besides just moving away from each other, they were under some unknown influence that could not be explained here. So that was some of her early work. She went on to observe thousands of galaxies, and she noticed something interesting, that galaxies were not uniformly randomly distributed in the universe. They kind of clung together like dewdrops on a spider web. You could find them in clusters and then ridges between the clusters. Today that's known as the cosmic web. And she was the first to notice this. She was the first to map this. So maybe one more breath here on this side. And then slowly bring that knee back up. You can do some wiggling around. I might suggest bending both knees. Draw both knees into your torso and give your knees a hug. You can maybe even do some little rotations with the knees, knee circles, and maybe feel the changing pressure on the floor with each of the knee circles. At some point, roll over to one side, bring yourself up to sitting, and now we'll do the other side of the half butterfly pose. So again, maybe with some height underneath your sits bones or without, sure. Legs extended. Right leg's extended, bend the left knee, lower the left knee over to the side, maybe pat it if you need to. Slowly draw the left heel in as far as it goes. So this is again establishing your edge for a half butterfly. And once you've found a reasonable stopping point here, grow up tall through the torso and then begin to fold and round forward here. So we're relaxing the muscles in the torso and letting the spine round so that the pressure gets into the connective tissue, the fascia, the ligaments, and the joints in the back, and maybe a slight compression in the front of the torso. You have to notice where you're feeling it. Maybe you feel it in compression in the front, maybe you feel tension in the back, maybe you feel both. This is what you're exploring. This is your own dark matter here. So find your edge here, and then we'll stay here for a few minutes. So when Vera graduated from undergraduate and became a graduate student, she got married. So her original name was Vera Cooper, but she married and changed her name to Vera Rubin. And they had a family. They had, I believe, a family of 4. It turns out all her kids grew up to be scientists too. But in those early days, she had some interesting things to deal with, because she was in the 1940s in the US. There were not many women in science. And so her first big talk to present her galactic motion results was to a room full of men, and she was actually fairly pregnant at the time. And because she was female and because she was pregnant, the men in the room did not take her seriously at all, even though her results were accurate and they were true. It turns out later they took her very seriously. She got her PhD in galactic motion. She went on to work at the Carnegie Institute, and she got to go out to California and observe at Palomar Observatory. That was interesting too, because as she worked at Palomar and later Peak in Arizona, in Palomar they didn't have a women's restroom, and so she had to actually, she cut out a little skirt out of paper and pasted it over the stick man on the restroom door, so that she could have her own restroom at Palomar. At Palomar and at Cape Peak, she observed the motions of galaxies. She also observed the motions of stars in H2 regions. She particularly got interested in our next door neighbor to the Milky Way, which is the Andromeda galaxy. And she started observing stars in H2 regions to see the stellar motions. She loves spiral galaxies, and she wanted to get a feel for the motions of the stars in the spirals. And she discovered something absolutely amazing here. So maybe 3 or 4 or 5 more breaths on this side of half butterfly. So one of the properties of gravity is the farther away something is orbiting a gravitational center, the slower it moves. This is just a general property. For example, you can think of the solar system. The sun is the main component of mass in our own solar system. So all the little things like the planets that orbit the sun, the farther away from the sun they are, the slower they move. So it takes the Earth is close to the sun, it takes a year to go around the sun. Jupiter is much farther away than the Earth, and it takes 10 years for the Jupiter to go around the sun. Saturn is twice as far as Jupiter, and it takes 30 years to go around. So that's the general principle, if that's the only matter around. One more breath here, and then we're coming out of this half butterfly pose. And then bring your torso up. You can bring the left knee up, extend the left leg out. You can do hinge maneuver again if you want to, or some other counter poses here. I'll just get set up for the other side of the reclined twist. Here. So at some point, make your way onto your back. Extend the right leg out, bend the left knee, and then allow the left knee to sweep over to the right. Again, you may or may not need to adjust your hips to stack the left hip on top of the right hip. Again, knee might make it to the floor, knee might float, or knee might need some padding underneath it. Left arm is out to the left in an outrigger, like a T position or a cactus arm position, to allow that left shoulder to kind of ooze back towards the ground. This is all setting up to use gravity, and we're kind of talking about gravity here with dark matter, to create and maintain the torso twist here. Again, head and neck can stay neutral. If you want to get a little bit of an extra stretch or twist in the neck and lift up your head, you can turn and look down that left arm. And again, if that's creating too much strain, then just keep your head neutral. And the main component is this twist that's happening in the main torso here. Find your breath, find a good edge. Maybe decide you need extra props here. Maybe this lower leg needs to bend a little bit. So find your shape. And you're doing this by feel. You're doing this by noticing and responding to things that you cannot see here. So Vera Rubin, she with others began to study. She started out with a galaxy that was close to the Milky Way, our own Andromeda galaxy, which is our sister galaxy, because the stars are close, they're easier to measure. And she measured some of the stars in the outer parts of the spiral arm. And she measured their speed, their motion. And she noticed that instead of traveling slower than the stars near the center, they were actually traveling at the same speed. This, if one just looks at the matter distribution from what is glowing in the Andromeda galaxy, this defies the gravitational distribution of matter. So the only conclusion can be is there must be more matter in and around the Andromeda galaxy that's influencing and affecting the stars in the outside of the spiral arms. Maybe this was an anomaly. So Vera went on to study thousands of more galaxies, spiral galaxies, and she found the same thing every time. The stars in the outer arms, which should be traveling slowly, were traveling very fast. And this could only be explained by the fact that there must be more mass, there must be more matter in the galaxies that we cannot see. Indeed, this day and age, we've studied our own galaxy, the Milky Way, and we've discovered that it contains a very large amount of this dark matter, whatever it is. There's a huge halo of extra matter around each and every galaxy, beyond the stuff that glows, that creates light. And we don't really know what this stuff is yet. Because all we can see is its influence. We have no way to detect it directly, and therefore we can't determine its properties. And so even to this day, to this date of recording, there's still speculation about what it could be. It has to be something that does not emit light, but still has mass. So when you're ready, maybe a few more breaths here. And then slowly bring yourself out of this twist pose here. Take some time here. You can draw your knees into your chest. Give your knees a hug. Rock back and forth here. When you're ready, roll over onto one side. Bring yourself up to seated. The next yin posture is shoelace pose with a lateral bend. A block or some books might be handy, so have a block handy here. So you'll start out with legs out in front, and you might sit up on some padding, although I found lately that for me, I feel more stable in shoelace when I'm not sitting on padding. You might feel more stable if you're sitting on some padding. Bend your left knee, and then stack your left knee on top of your right leg. So this is half shoelace. Maybe you really like this, so you can stay in half shoelace. But for full shoelace, bend the right knee, draw the right shin, right heel on the outside of the left hip here. So knees are roughly stacked. Obviously my knees are perfectly stacked here, but heels can be farther out or in. Knees can be off center here. Knees just can't be in pain. So we're trying to create a hip opener in the outside of the hips, but if the knees are feeling too much sharp, biting, burning pain, then you have to change your shape here, or put padding under whatever knee might need a little bit more stability here. So this is shoelace. You can just stay here if you're feeling a lot of pressure, like maybe it's kind of slightly uncomfortable, but you think you might be able to maintain it for a few minutes. But I'm going to suggest adding a lateral bend to this, and this is where a block comes in handy. So place a block on your right side, and then just gently laterally bend over to the right side. Rest your elbow on the block. The block has different settings, so you can adjust to different settings so that you can relax your torso here. And if you're clever with the height of the block, you can maybe rest your head and your neck in with your hand and your forearm. The left arm can wrap behind your torso, just so that you know you're in a lateral bend and you're not kind of drooping over in a forward bend here. Or if you don't have a block, you can just extend this arm. Sometimes I do this without a block. I extend the arm out, I lock the elbow off so that I don't have to maintain muscular effort in that arm. And I can just let things hang here, if this is okay with my head and my neck here. So we'll stay here for a few minutes. Get in touch with your inner sensations, the stopping points, the pressure points, the traction, the tension, the compression that you cannot see, and yet it's influencing where you stop, and the shape of the posture that you can see, which is not important. It's like in the universe, we tend to study the things we can actually observe, but it turns out what we can actually see, what actually emits light, is a tiny fraction of all the matter that is out there. 15% is what we can see. 85% is something that we can't see, but it's heavily influencing the stars in a galaxy, and it's heavily influencing galactic motion in general in the universe. You can also see this in very exotic effects like gravitational lensing here, and you can actually estimate the matter of dark matter. So about halfway through on this side, what is dark matter? Like I said, astronomers don't really know, because you can't see it directly. And if you can't see it directly, then you can only speculate. Whatever it is, it probably has mass, because you need mass to generate gravity. And it seems to have an effect of the gravity. So it has to have mass, but it doesn't generate any light. Well, leaves lots of possibilities. One thing that they consider is it's some sort of fundamental particle, vast amounts of fundamental particles that, again, they don't have the property of emitting light, but they do have some mass. And if you add up all those particles, maybe they have enough mass in the universe. So this is almost the realm of quantum mechanics. It is some kind of quantum mechanical particle that fills the universe. Something like a neutrino, but they think maybe neutrinos don't have enough mass to be that particle. Could be something as exotic as just a bunch of black holes that we haven't accounted for. Maybe there's more black holes, stellar black holes, roaming around in a galaxy than we think there are. And the mass of those black holes adds up to be the missing mass, because of course black holes, they don't emit light, and you cannot see them except for indirect measures like gravitational lensing or infalling material into the black hole here. So about 3 more breaths on this side. Again, you don't have to do the lateral bend. This is I'm kind of multitasking here with shoelace and the lateral bend. 1 more breath here. When you're ready, slowly bring yourself up. Maybe put this right hand on the ground. Use the right hand to slowly move yourself back to center. Release your arms. Maybe lean back on your arms to release your legs slowly. Extend your legs out. I love windshield wipers, so I'm going to recommend windshield wipers as a counter maneuver. So knees are bent, feet are on the ground, far apart from each other, and then you slowly cycle both knees over to one side or the other. You can do this fairly quickly, or you can do this very slowly and deliberately, so you can actually get in touch with the stopping points of your hip sockets as you rotate from one side to the other. This is a little bit of a flower sequence, and by flower I mean before we do the other side of this asymmetric posture, we'll do a symmetrical one, and the symmetrical one will be Milky Way Pose. Milky Way Pose is a supported bridge pose that will require some props to generate height. I like to use 2 blocks. You can use some books, or any other kind of you can use a sturdy bolster underneath your torso. So you'll make your way onto your back. Have your height props ready. Feet bent, or knees bent, feet on the floor, about hip width apart. And then take your prop. I've got these props on the high side, but you can use the middle side, you can use the low side. So maybe pick the height that works for you. Lift your hips up, press your hips up, and place your prop underneath your sacrum, your low back, that flat bony part of the back where it is comfortable and stable here. You might only have 1 block, so you put 1 block. I like 2 because it feels a little bit more stable. Now I have the blocks on the extremely high side. That might be too high. You can put them on the medium setting or on the low setting. If you have books, find the right height, how many books you need for the right height. And option number 1 is to just stay here with your knees bent. I used to call this psoas stretch, and for psoas stretch, you gently begin to extend your legs out and start feeling the pressure that it generates along the front of your pelvic bone down through your thighs, because this starts to put pressure on the fascial bags of the hip flexors. And since they tend to be tight in a lot of us, this can be intense. So you kind of decide what you want to do here. On the other hand, if it's not too uncomfortable, maybe stay here with legs extended for a little while. This is a direct counter pose to sitting in a chair here, which is why it's so intense for most of us. And again, you can always fix the height. If it's too high, go lower. Find a lower setting here until it's something that's reasonable. It might have to be pretty low. By the way, an alternative for this posture is Sphinx pose, because this is a back bend. So the back side of your torso is actually extended here. So if this is just not fitting you, then try Sphinx pose instead. Just lay on your belly and put your elbows underneath your shoulders. Go into a nice back bend that way. And then we'll stay here for a couple more minutes or so. So I named this posture Milky Way Pose because I've seen all these amazing, well, if you go out in the night, every once in a while, if it's really dark and clear, like you're not in a city, and you can actually see the band of Milky Way light, which is looking into the disk of our own spiral galaxy, the Milky Way, you'll see that sometimes it creates this beautiful arch all the way across the sky in some locations and during some times here. And you're making that same graceful arch here in this supported bridge pose, thus the name Milky Way Pose. And I bring that up because a little bit of an anecdote for dark matter. So our own home Milky Way, of which we are inside, and because we're inside of it, all we can see of our own galaxy is that strip of light from one of the arms of from the spiral arms of our galaxy. Our sister galaxy is the Andromeda galaxy, which is our nearest large spiral galaxy. It was believed for a long time that Andromeda was much larger than the Milky Way. It certainly has more stars than the Milky Way does. I think the Milky Way has about 400 billion stars in it, so glowing stars in it. Andromeda has 1 trillion stars in it. And because it has so many more stars, we thought it must be much bigger. But since we now know of dark matter and how it influences the motion of stars, we can use that to gauge how much dark matter each galaxy has. And what we've discovered is that our own Milky Way galaxy has much more dark matter in it than the Andromeda galaxy, which means our home galaxy is actually bigger, more massive than the Andromeda galaxy. It's not brighter. The Andromeda galaxy has more stars and is more shiny than the Milky Way. But the Milky Way has more of this unseen stuff that's referred to as dark matter. It's about 3 more breaths here in this supported bridge pose. Again, maybe feel your pressure points, your stopping points here. That's the dark matter. That's the stuff that doesn't glow, but still there and still has a major influence here. One more breath here, then it's time to come out. So if you're in Milky Way pose, bend your knees, put your feet on the floor, push through your feet and your shoulders to lift your hips up high enough that you can take your hands and remove whatever you've been using for props. And then maybe slowly and gently lower your torso back down to the ground. When you get there, maybe stay there for a moment, or bend your knees and slowly, watchword here is slowly, draw your knees into your torso. You can slowly rock from side to side. And maybe feel this great release of pressure in the low back here. You can stay here for a breath or two. When you're ready, roll over to one side. We still have the other side of shoelace to do. So come back to sitting, legs out in front. and then find your version of shoelace with a lateral bend. So the right knee bends and you stack the right knee on top of the left knee. This is called half shoelace, and you can always welcome yourself to stay here or come into full shoelace by bending that bottom knee and dragging the shin and the heel around to the right side. Find your version here. Use padding where you need to underneath. Maybe you need to sit up a little bit higher, or maybe you need some padding underneath your knee. And then maybe find a prop to laterally bend to the left side here to use for your elbow. So laterally bend to the left, and if you want a perch for your head and your neck, then adjust your block or prop so that you can rest your elbow and use your forearm to rest your head and your neck on it. Right arm can just kind of hang out behind your torso here. Maybe that creates too much strain in your shoulder, so then your right arm can do whatever you want to do here. And again, remember, you can adjust the height of your block and the placement here. So there's nothing sacred about the placement and the height of my block here. It can be higher, it can be lower, or you can go with no block at all here. And then just hang out here and allow things to soften, allow time to pass. Again, this is why I tell stories during practice, is once you've found a good edge, once you've kind of noticed that edge and the stopping points, then you come back and revisit your breath and your edge, just in case you need to change anything. Otherwise, our minds are human minds, and they tend to wander quickly. And they can either wander about things like the groceries list or whatever's on your mind, or they can focus on maybe something that we've never really contemplated, like dark matter, like the extra mass in the universe that we can't see and yet has a huge effect over the motions of the stars around us, the motions of our own galaxy, all the galaxies around us. This was the work of Vera Rubin, and she discovered indirectly that something is influencing the motions of stars in the outer arms of spiral galaxies. She noticed that something is influencing the clusterings of galaxies and their motions as they expand throughout the universe. And this something has been given the term dark matter, and it's an important concept in astronomy, in cosmology. It's a new one. Most ideas that we have about the universe are no more than 100 years old, because that's when we really developed large telescopes and sophisticated instruments to actually see more faint objects, and seeing more faint objects means we can see farther into the universe, because the farther something is away, the fainter it is. And that's all we can do, is see the stuff that glows. And what we're finding out is not only is there stuff that glows, but there's stuff that does not. Not only do you make a superficial shape when you're practicing a physical yoga practice, the more important and the more overwhelming experience in yoga is what you're feeling, and how that feeling and your sensations, which is influencing everything else in the posture. And that's actually what we're supposed to be focusing on here. So one more breath on this side. And then maybe put your left hand down on the ground, use your left arm to kind of move your torso back up. You can do little motions with the torso to work out the kinks. Maybe you want to do some twists, but maybe your hips are wanting to come out of shoelace pose. So lean back on your hands to support yourself, release your legs. And again, I like windshield wipers. I'll do some windshield wipers. Maybe you like to do something else here. That was the final long-held yin posture. So a little bit of integration before we settle into a final resting posture. I'm going to suggest staff pose and a forward fold here. So staff pose is just sitting like an L shape. It's a little bit of a yang posture. So maybe sit up on some height if you have a lot of tightness in your back body. As you extend your legs out long, you grow up long through your torso to bring your spine nice and neutral. You can use your hands and your arms to kind of help, to make this as close of an L shape as you can. So muscles are engaged to do this here. And then hinge forward. You might have to bend your knees a little bit. And then you can hinge forward, either keep your spine straight or come into a little bit of a caterpillar here by rounding your spine here. Maybe stay here for a couple of breaths or so. And then bring your torso back up, straighten it back out. And by straightening it, I mean bring it back to neutral here. So come back to staff pose one last time here. And then from here, we'll move into our resting posture. If there's any other movements or postures you'd like to practice, you can do those here now for the next few breaths, and then settle into your resting posture. My resting posture is going to be just a traditional resting posture, Shavasana, laying on my back on the floor here. You can practice this, or you're always welcome to practice your own restorative posture. Arms are extended far enough from your waist so that the palms can maybe face up, your arms roll out here. Legs are far enough away from each other so that the feet can kind of flop, whatever the direction they want to flop. And then maybe you need blankets or clothing for warmth. Maybe you need some padding underneath your head. Just put a pillow underneath your head here. Anything that makes this more comfortable. Because the idea here is to completely release and relax and surrender here for a few moments. Your only job is to be here. Your only job is to have nothing to do and nowhere to go. Your only job is to notice the rise and fall of your breath here. But if your brain does need something here for the next few moments, maybe you can visualize yourself as a child interested in astronomy. You're laying at your bed at night, looking out at the sky through the window right above your bed, and you notice the stars. You notice the stars slowly crossing through the window as the earth turns. And you notice the spaces in between those little points of light. And you wonder what might be there, what kind of influence it might have. Indeed, you can have the same visualization about your own inner landscape. This true being of yours that's much more than the superficial labels, much more than the superficial accomplishments and superficial titles that you give yourself. Those are the sparkly, shiny things, maybe. Underneath, there's this overwhelming being of dark matter, of true self, that influences, even dominates and influences who you are, and how you connect with the rest of the universe. At some point, bring yourself back. You can start to move fingers, move toes, move hands and move arms, move feet, move legs. Gently rock your head from side to side. At some point, you can gently bend your knees and then roll over onto one side. Settle there for a moment. Reconnect with your intent and your practice, and give yourself a big thank you for your efforts during practice, and also a big thank you for you, your unique embodiment in this universe. The universe is ecstatically joyful that you are here. And slowly bring yourself up. Come back to the stable seat. When you have arrived there, bring your hands together at heart center. And I'll end this practice with an Om. The inner light in me honors. The inner light in